This is Art Is, a podcast for artists, where we talk about all things top of mind for emerging artists. I'm Isotta, and I'm an artist. I make sculpture, and I'm currently really interested in exploring how making sculpture with marble, a truly ancient material, can get us as humans in touch with deep geologic time. I'll be sharing more about my practice throughout this season, which is a new thing for me, because I started this podcast back in 2021 as a recent art school grad, grappling with starting my professional practice in the pandemic and feeling very lost and alone. Working on this pod helped me expand my horizons creatively and intellectually. So here we are, 3 years later, still making the show, but now with an amazing co-host.
And I'm Lauryn. I'm an artist and a career coach for creatives. I help artists and creatives master their mindset, align with their purpose, and make money doing work they love. Lately, I've been working on my acrylic and gouache cake paintings, and most interested in learning more about the intersection of emotional well-being and spirituality, especially as it relates to life as an artist.
Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on today. We're so excited to get to chat with you and learn more about your practice and what's been top of mind for you. So if you wouldn't mind to start us off, maybe you could just introduce yourself and the kind of work that you do.
Okay. My name is Michelle, as Isotta just said. And I do a lot of things. I would say, like, the tagline on my website is artist, writer, and filmmaker. And even though I kind of use a lot of mediums, I guess the ideas are always the same. So maybe for me, the medium doesn't necessarily matter as much as more like my ideas and things that I'm thinking about that matter more.
That's so beautiful. I love that. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I resonate with that a lot because even though, I'm a career coach, I paint, I write poetry, I feel like a lot of it is there's that through line of like the intention behind it.
Yeah, it's just like your personality coming through, basically. I feel like when you're an artist or a creative person, you you have this need to express yourself for whatever reason. Different people have different reasons, but then it just comes out. Like, it could be anything. Like, I always think I would also, even if I was just working a 9-to-5 job, I probably would still have, the same outlet somehow. It's almost like people who want to express themselves have the desire to do it, and then obviously later down the line you want to try to make it professional and stuff, but I guess the intention is always the same and you have to find like what that intention is for you, I think.
Yeah, and I notice a lot of my clients sometimes shame themselves because they're like, oh, I stay in one lane. And it's like, no, actually, like you look at some of the most successful artists and they do so many things, like Salvador Dali. He was like throwing dinner parties and made a cookbook. He was also painting, and he had tarot cards, like so many different things. And yeah, so I'm curious a little bit more about your journey and like how you got from like maybe even back to your childhood. Were you always making art, and like how has that journey influenced where you're at right now?
So I guess, I was always making art or paying attention to art, and museums, galleries, and I would say like culture in general. I guess that's the most important thing for me. And it just happens to be expressed through art, or has been, for the majority of my life, because obviously went to art school. But I also like writing about culture, not just making art. And the journey, I guess, is a really difficult one of being an artist. It's really hard. It's probably the hardest thing you can do, not only financially and uh, physically and like socially, because you end up being by yourself quite a lot of the day. It's also emotionally very difficult. Um, and even though you're doing something that's I guess a passion, a lot of the time you end up doing things you don't like you end up doing jobs which are horrible. There's obviously also really boring aspects about any artwork, like painting itself is quite boring, editing videos boring. It's like nothing is like perfect. Um, but the journey is basically, short answer is really difficult, and I'm still trying to figure out what the progression is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for being so candid too. I think, you know, like life in general is difficult. And then you add
Yeah.
on you being human is difficult. And then you add on like being a super sensitive person that can like emote and express in so many different ways and has this like inner drive to share that with people. It's one of the most challenging things, and I think that's why a lot of people decide to just take the safe route.
Mm, yeah.
What gives you the courage to keep going?
Um, the courage. Well, I guess for me it's more like I just feel like I need to do it. Whenever I'm making art or writing or um but especially with writing, I feel more than with other things. Like when you start doing something, for me at least, it just feels like not like when I'm doing it that I just have to do it and it feels right. That's basically it. But then the courage to keep going sometimes is actually really hard because practically, like financially, it's really difficult. And I live in London, a very expensive city, and you just have to do balancing acts all the time, and also kind of like lie to yourself sometimes and be like, I don't know. For instance, right now I'm like wanting to find a full-time job because life is getting really expensive. But I've kind of, and it was a really difficult thing to come to terms with, that I wanted to do that. Um, and it happened over several months that I had like sort of lots of mini breakdowns in the process. But then I ended up realizing that just because like one thing doesn't take away the other. And if you have a job that you enjoy, doesn't mean that you stop being an artist. If anything, that more less pressurized financial situation is probably only going to give you more freedom. I think that as an artist, ultimately, what you're looking for, maybe it's almost a personality trait, is that you're looking for freedom in whatever way that presents itself.
Yeah, that's so great to kind of recognize too, because no one's journey, like everyone's journey is different. And
Hmm.
it's almost like you also have to kind of dance with the external, like what is showing up for you, and figure out solutions however you can, and in that sometimes like little miracle things happen that you're like, oh, now I understand later, years down the line, why this happened, you know
Mm-hmm.
because I worked for an art gallery for 6 years, and then I worked for a publishing company. So I studied illustration. So I took the corporate route kind of first, and then
Hmm.
now I'm coming back, but I'm very grateful for that because I have so much experience with systems and processes, with business, with networking, with um, sales. And even though I had to put my art kind of like secondary,
Mm.
but you do get skills from those jobs.
super useful. Like I feel like me and Isotta, we've talked about this in the past, how like you just literally at art school you don't learn anything. At least in the UK, I think different places around the world are different. But so actually I almost feel like you're brainwashed in art school, where you have to not be a certain way, sort of commercial, and then when you come out into the art world, you realize that it's nothing but commercial, and actually you probably have more say in what you end up doing if you're just doing it by yourself, at least for the beginning of a career. And an artist's career really is years and years and years long. Like almost when you're 40, you're really considered mid-career, whereas in a corporate job, you're kind of like a senior person. So it's like almost a completely different timeline that you cannot compare to anyone else or any other more, uh, I guess, studied route that lots of people take. So, and yeah, nobody tells you how they do it. And also, I guess this podcast is a really amazing thing because it's a lot of people suddenly are really big or successful in some way, and they're just like, the whole lie of like, if you just work hard and follow your dreams, you'll make it. But like sometimes even to follow your dream, you have to not do your dream, or you have to do something else. It's definitely not, it's almost like being an artist itself is actually not a romantic thing, even though a lot of people like superimpose this romanticism onto it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny about the teachers in college, because I had the same experience too. It's like you would think that the teachers, because they're most of them, at least at my college, were living artists. Like they were artists, and then they had to find another job, I'm assuming, which was teaching. And it's like, why were they gatekeeping? Like,
Yeah, I think the gatekeeping thing is a very entrenched thing. And also, if you look at the art world in a kind of like from a very practical point of view, or it's a very opaque world, and it's based on exclusion and an elite as well. So obviously, that sort of attitude trickles down, and it's not and it's the way it's been for like centuries. So I don't know why in art school they sort of, I mean, I do know why, but they just teach you in this sort of like watered down like neo-Marxist way that you have to like not be, you have to almost be in like opposition to what the reality of being a creative and an artist is in the 21st century. And then you come out into the real world and you have uh, a very big sense of like passion, but is completely misplaced, and you have all of these skills that are really not practical in any way for the realities of living in the world. So some people are able to navigate that easier than others, but I think for the majority of people, it is this kind of shock to the system that you can only learn through life experience, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's really interesting to hear, Michelle, like how you've been approaching, like thinking about professional artwork, because maybe it's not that clear to you, but to me, it seems very much like mirroring the way that you approach making work. And it's like this very like high level, like very conceptual approach. And like even before when you were introducing your practice and talking about how, it's intuitive and it's about the ideas. And to me, it sounded as if you were like defining conceptual art and which I loved because it was like also such a personal definition instead of the like, really high level, like elite art school definition. But
Mm.
I just see that you're bringing that fluidity and that kind of like, jumping around kind of like experimental approach to thinking about building your career. And I think that that's really awesome. And it seems really authentic to you. And I don't think it's anything to be like, you know, casting shadows on or anything like that, because it does seem like you're thinking about this career problem as an art problem, and you're using your art brain, and you know it's it's long term. We've all signed up to do this forever. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's weird to think about, like, yeah, like I want to do art for the rest of my life. Like I'm not going to retire from like being an
Yeah.
artist when I'm
It's almost like like a lifetime commitment once you decide, and you don't. It's almost like you're signing a paper that's sort of like you're selling your soul to the devil or something. You're like, you don't realize what you're signing, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I think now I understand what I got myself into like 4 years ago when I started to want to be an artist. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you're absolutely right. Yeah, lifelong commitment. But
Yeah.
when you think
So
about it like that, the pressure's off as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, Lauren, but I've just been starting to recognize like the importance of being patient and
Mm,
being patient with myself, and like not just thinking like, oh, well, when I was at school, the academic calendar was like, 9 months. And so at the end of the term, I have to have results, and I have to, it's just like, it's so unhelpful nowadays.
mm,
And like the kind of learning and research that we're trying to do cannot be like constrained in like quarters or terms or whatever. And of course it's so important to have like goals and milestones. And I think that through Lauryn I've really learned um, a framework with which to keep myself accountable to progress, and to like making sure that this commitment to art doesn't also you know commit me to a life of you know being on the edge of everything. um
yeah.
Sanity, financial security, whatever
Yeah.
bag it is for you. But
I feel
I
like I
just
need to have
yeah
a session as well then with Lauren because
Well, Lauren is the
I
pro.
I offer free consultations. It's a whole hour, and it's even if you don't sign up to work with me long term, it's a really in-depth session that you get to hear solutions. Like you get to hear actual solutions to what the issues that are coming up for you, and then decide whether you want to work with them with me or try and do it on your own.
Oh, amazing. Okay. I'll contact you later as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to also like just recognize like how universal all these issues are. And before you flag the idea that like so many artists aren't transparent about their career trajectories, and
Mm.
you know, because there's never been like any impetus to, and there's never been any benefit of doing that.
Yeah,
And I
it's
guess
almost
like
like a negative thing, actually.
yeah, exactly. And so of course, like how are you're comparing yourself to this like very shiny, like tiny amount of information that's like the highlight reel, that's maybe like a gallery puts as like this artist's bio, and you're like, oh wow, well, like look at how accomplished they are, like they must be perfect. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like I'm definitely guilty of that kind of comparison. But yeah, I mean, learning from each other and recognizing that the issues, especially around funding and around like supporting yourself, are universal, is so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, Isotta, you just sent me the Beyond the Studio where they break down how much they make. And it was so interesting to listen to because I felt like, oh, like I was on the edge of my seat because I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, they're gonna break down exactly what they made. And it's for me, like I actually was thinking about it this morning in the bathroom when I was putting my makeup on. Like I would love to break down and share what I've made in the past like 4 years just to show people too. But it's so like thinking about doing that is so daunting because it's like, well, what does
Mm.
that mean about me? Like
It's
what?
so exposing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like if more people did that, I feel like it's like, why not?
I'm finding that whenever I meet someone who I sort of like their career or like where they're at and their work, I do just ask them really direct questions. Even I've had like studio visit with artists that I really admire. Like recently, an artist came, and I was just asking him directly, like, how did he make it in the early stages? Like, how were you making, literally, like, how were you making money? And um, often it's different for everyone, I feel, and a lot of people are just really lucky. It just comes like some people just start selling work straight away. Other people don't have to pay rent because they live with their parents, or like, all of these different things, which just the more you know about each person, if you just ask people direct questions, I think it's really hard for people to say to not answer a very direct question. So if you go and you ask someone like, yeah, like how much do you make, even in like corporate jobs, like you can ask people, oh, like if your friend has gotten a rise, you can say like, oh, but like how much is that rise to? And most people will be, I think, if especially if your friend's fine with answering.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, when artists or people are older too, I think they forget what it used to be like back in the beginning as well. But I just went to this conference in Phoenix, and she's a business owner of It Cosmetics, and she was telling her story about how she left corporate and decided to start her business. And she went through so much failure. Like, so many people said no to her, and she was telling the story. And it just was like so calming for me to hear, because I'm like, yes, like in the beginning, most people, like generally,
Mm,
don't just take off. Like, they get a lot of no's, and it's sustaining that kind of trust. And she said she, like, they went bankrupt, like they were on the brink of bankruptcy so many times, and she just had this inner knowing that she had to keep going. And who knows how she, was able to like create money and things. But it is quite often that the beginning, like, I don't know how many years, it's just a lot of no's before you get yeses.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Or even if you get a yes, then you get sort of like a no from life, something bad happens, or it's when you're a freelance, and but then also you just have to decide, I think, for yourself, if you want that or not. Like nobody really tells you when you're younger, but I think it's also like a part of growing up, and then um it's almost like what you just said about, like, for most people, I feel like I think maturing is learning that you're not special, that you're not different to anyone else. And I think that is like quite humbling. And once you have that in mind, I think you take the pressure off, and maybe you're able to do better things, because you're not like expecting to be the top. It's almost like the teenage dream of like, I want to be a rock star when I'm older, but it's like, okay, I'm the normal person. I'm not going to be a rock star, but at least maybe you'll still be able to make music. And once you think about it like that, who knows, maybe you will end up in that space of like ultimate success, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
can't think
it's
so far in advance.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's like staying focused on the end goal, this like public figure type of thing of like the ego.
Mm,
When it's like that attachment can just take you away from the present moment, which is like where the actual work happens to get you there. So it's like
mm,
it's such a fascinating, because I've had to deal with that too, of like, oh, I want to like have a fancy website and like look a certain way. And it's like, actually, I can just create relationships through people I interact with.
mm.
I don't have to have some kind of like professional appearance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's more important, definitely. The present in general. Yeah, like talking to people, yeah, making your artwork, like making a living. It's just if you're not enjoying your present just as a human being, then you would just I guess that is a failure, because you don't know how long you until you are happy, You have to try. But it's really hard, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about what you said, Michelle, about like that realization of like you're not special. And I've been thinking that a lot in a really particular way, because like when you're sharing your work and you're sharing, visual art, or like maybe in my case sculpture,
Mm.
I've been thinking a lot about like who am I sharing it to, and like how are they, like if we're the same, like we're all the same, we're all just humans, like how can I like actually relate to this other person and like not have this like art speak, or like this art world like kind of like elitism, or like this gatekeeping, and think like, oh no, 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 like this isn't for you, or like I have to say it in a particular way, or like I have to like mimic what I've been told is the way to do it, or like the way to present a career or something like that. And I've just been trying to like catch myself when I like think about sharing, or think about like, maybe in like a selling situation, or in like, just writing about the work or presenting it, and like trying to think like how can I actually like just invite somebody else like on the same level, like with
Mm.
respect, to like be here and not like pretend and like just
Yeah.
be fake. And just like recognize that it's like, oh yeah, like okay, like applying for a grant or applying for something and being like, wow, like there's actually a human reading this on the other end, and like how can I like let them in to this process, because it's so easy to just like distance yourself and like put yourself in your own bubble, and like especially if you're working on like a independent creative practice, like it's really isolating, and you were saying that earlier as well. And I think in the past I just wouldn't ever invite anybody in, and so it was just like very like the walls around me were very tall, and it's just kind of nice to like think about like creating those access points and like make
Mm.
that like on my own terms, and not make it feel like I'm being forced to, or like being exposed or something.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I think
yeah.
that also makes sense with like the new stuff that you're making as well. I feel like you can see that come through from
Oh,
the things that you've shown me. I think they seem more like organic somehow. Maybe it's because
thanks.
you're not using like found objects maybe anymore.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I'm experimenting a lot right now with yeah, organic material, rocks. Yeah. But I'd love to hear some more about like the different creative practices that you've been doing. I know that, your background is really like in performance and in film, but then you like turned to painting, and I'd love to hear about like what you've been kind of curious about in the last few years, because you were actually on the podcast back in season
What?
2. So returning guest here.
When
And
we were all distraught.
yeah, exactly. And so, and like your practice has evolved so much. And like I personally have been working in marble for a year.
Mm.
Exactly, like in April of last year, I started working in marble. And so it's only been 1 year, but like I feel like everything has really changed for me in that regard. But like I know you also dove into painting like a few years ago, and now we're like working in film again, and there's like some hybridity there. And yeah, I was just curious to hear about that side of your work.
Um, yeah, so I guess the what happened was I was doing performance and video art at uni, like performative video art, and then uh, uni ended, and then in the real world, I was I didn't have an interest to pursue being a performance artist because um, you can be performative in different ways, and I just didn't want to. I didn't feel the need to do it, and then just quite by accident, I ended up getting a studio, and I was like, okay, there's a studio, and there's nobody to tell me what to do, and I have space and I have time. So I decided to start painting. And it was really, really, really frustrating at the beginning because I didn't know how to do it properly or didn't know how to communicate. And then through, I guess I was doing it like full time for maybe like 3 years almost. I mean, I guess, or like semi full time. And I did I did get really what I thought was like really good at expressing what I wanted, but also uh there was like backs and forths. So like, you know, you go down a route um that you're interested in, and then suddenly you're not interested in anymore, and painting is so slow that your ideas in your brain are moving way faster than you're able to paint, at least in the way that is a considered way of painting. Some people paint really quickly, but that really was not the way. But also, I don't think it, as I was saying like earlier, I don't think it was any different. Because in a way, the scenes that I was painting, a lot of interiors or like uh um kind of moments um about performance, they're all kind of linked to my core interests of like anticipation, like aspirational desire, uh like things that are incomplete. um and so it's just like I almost see what I was painting as like the backdrop of like a film that I would have made if, or like a theater performance I would have put on. It's almost like it's like world building. It's just one other aspect of the ideas that of the, sort of like the rich inner world that maybe that I've developed as a young from like a young age, which I think every artist does have. Um, that idea of like you need to you need to communicate your inner world because of a sense of like alienation, loneliness. Uh, for some people, it's even like trauma. Like there is like something always there that you just like don't understand, and you can only get to understand by doing. And now I'm doing. Um, I want to make a real film, like a proper film, and I'm writing the script. And I applied for this funding, didn't get it. Did get shortlisted though, but now now it's like I'm writing the another draft. Um, so it's all slowly taking away. And I also developed like a creative writing practice for poetry, and basically I think I did all of the things that I wanted to do and got to the base level of like being good enough uh without the dedication. So now to get actually good, really good at everything, I would need to dedicate myself fully to one of those things. And now I've sort of paused that. It's almost like I've achieved that, and then now I need to earn money desperately. So I want to have a job, but it doesn't mean that the other things are not happening. It's just that the priority is now temporarily shifted. So that's kind of like the very honest uh, career progression. I just wanted to get really good at a lot of things. I did, and now to actually get really good, like an actual professional level and be competitive with other people who do it as a profession, I would need to dedicate a lot of time, but for that I need money, and so money is what comes next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say your paintings are incredible. I really
Oh,
love
thank
them.
you.
Have you ever thought about, or have you sold any of them? Have you put them in a show, anything like that?
Yeah, I've done some shows and I have sold a few as well. I would love to sell more. So if anyone's interested, let me know. I also have a drawing practice, which is like more immediate. Because I was saying, painting is takes a really long time, and the immediacy of your idea sometimes is not communicated in the same way. So something different comes out, which is also uh, sort of has its own magic. But I'm sometimes more interested in like rhythm and pacing. And so drawing as a faster medium, I do a lot of work in pastels, works really well. And also in a very practical level, pastel drawing is cheaper than a painting. So I managed to sell more pastel drawings, and that does actually get me more of a quick income sometimes. It's not nowhere near as like as much as a painting would be, and if I was selling painting a lot, but um yeah, it's also quite a bad time, I think, right now for the art world and for people buying and selling.
And as far as your film project goes, is that just a story that came to you? Is it like, how did you come up with the script?
Um, it's based on, I guess, personal experience and friends' experiences as well. Um, and it was, I think, probably the best thing I've ever done to write the script and send it out. And it was super cathartic. And I kept getting feedback from, because I connected with different directors and other people in the industry to take a look at it. And um, it was almost for me more effortless to write the script. And I kept getting feedback that I was really good at writing, and that felt amazing. So if people that you look up to are giving you positive feedback, that also helps you so much sort of actually finish what you start. Um, um, and and yeah, and I hope it gets made sooner rather than later, but I don't have a doubt that it will get made at some point. But I went to this talk about like a filmmaker, a director who made his first film for he got pitched to Netflix and they accepted, and he was basically working on his projects for 10 years whilst he had like other jobs. You know, he had like it was he had day jobs, and he worked in the film industry as his day job, but not being a director. He ended up after 10 years he did it, and it was like what when it came out, one of the most watched films in like 3 countries or something like that. So you just have to the thing that you were saying is also about like patience is like really important, I think, especially if you care about a project. You can't rush it.
Yeah, and like just as far as like age, I have clients that come to me that are like, I'm too young to do this, and then I'm too old to do this. And it's like, that's just a thought, you know? It's like find people who have similar stories and remind yourself
Yeah.
like what some of the options are. Like my favorite artist is Mark Ryden. He does pop surrealism. And I was reading part of one of his books, and he didn't have his first gallery show until he was 35. And for me, I'm 36. I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
that's so great to know. Like he was doing art a lot of the time, but to have his first official show at 35 was like, okay, like that's great to know. Because for some reason I had it in my head like you have to just, be doing it all the time. Like we make up these weird beliefs just because to separate ourselves and make maybe just that feeling of being other, and like
Yeah.
like proving that like we're not capable.
Mm. Yeah, that's yeah, it's almost like being an artist, you're like really stubbornly saying to the world that you are an other, but actually you're not. But and then if you just look at your art as like another job, or like you're just like, well, it's my job, so I have to do it, and it's not like even if you are working on something else, you're like, well, I said that I would write 300 words, so I just need to do it because I promised someone, but then that someone is you. So it's like you almost like you're like lying to yourself. I think, yeah, the thing about like lying to yourself and being good at balancing being practical and romanticism, it's like a really difficult thing to do. But if you have your priorities well figured out, I don't see why eventually you wouldn't be able to do what you want to do. But you do have to do it. If you want to write a script, you have to sit down and write it, even if you don't want to.
Right, there has to be some kind of like a little bit of delusional thinking, almost like you have to believe it in order to see it. Like you have to be like, yes, this may seem impossible to someone else, but to me, like I believe
Yeah.
in it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, for me, the way that I do it, and that by no means am I saying I'm like figured out if it's a successful thing or not, but like it's it's almost like I've recently tried to not think about, which is hard because obviously as artists you want to be like, okay, then I'll make this film and then I'll get funding and then I'll make a feature film and then it'll go to like Cannes and then I'm gonna like, what am I gonna wear in like the premiere, and like who's gonna be my plus one. And it's like really hard not to like go down that route. And but then so you just kind of like, instead of, and I guess the belief in yourself is more like you just believe that you're gonna finish it and then that's it. And then once you finish it, then comes the next thing. It's almost like uh believe that it deserves to be made and that deserves to be finished, but not that you are the greatest gift that's ever lived or anything like that. It's almost just like, I want to make it, I'm alive, I can do it. And that's, for me, that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it too, Michelle. Thank you so
Oh,
much
really?
for like your true wisdom today. Really, like so wise, and you know, I love it. I can't wait to come to Cannes and see you at the premiere.
Oh my God, you'll be my plus one. Got it.
No, it's awesome, and I think that your passion and dedication is really inspiring.
Well, I would never have thought to be considered inspiring, but that's nice.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today and getting to know you a little bit more too. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so much. I'm gonna email you as well, Lauren.
yeah. It was so cool to have like an update about your practice and where you're at, and yeah, your generosity of sharing and stuff is really great, and you know, forming that online community that we're all a part of. So
Yeah,
yeah, thanks for being open, and thanks Lauren for joining us as well. And
thank you.
yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for being here. When you have a moment, please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and email us at listen@artistpodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Our music is by Black Wonder Twins. And now, a final message from Lauryn.
Hey, it's your creative career coach, Lauryn Hill. If you're ready to find more fulfillment and purpose in your life and make money doing work you love, I want to invite you to sign up for a free coaching consultation. In this 60-minute assessment, we'll talk about where you're currently at in your career and creative life. We'll get clear on where you want to go and what your vision is, and then we'll figure out what's getting in the way of you making it happen. After this intake process, I'll share with you solutions, what it would look like for us to work together, and how one-on-one coaching can help you create the results that you desire, but you have been struggling to create on your own. And if you feel like you're not quite clear on your goals yet or don't really understand what coaching is, that's okay. Don't let it stop you from signing up for a consultation. I guarantee that you'll leave the consultation with more clarity on your goals and a better understanding of the profound impact that coaching can have on the rest of your life and career. So head over to curatedSplash.com/start-now. That's curatedSplash.com/start-now and click the free strategy consultation button to sign up now. Hope to hear from you soon.